Okay, good morning, folks. I'm Dr. Tom Meade. Welcome to another episode of our show. My special guest and good friend is Dr. Steve Sinatra, the #1 integrative cardiologist in the country. What's integrative? What does he integrate? He integrates traditional medicine and complementary or alternative medicine. He has done this for 20 or 30 years. He has practiced cardiology for over 40 years. He has unparalleled credentials, as you can see on the screen. He's a fellow in the American College of Cardiology, the American College of Nutrition. He is certified by the American Board of Internal Medicine. He's certified in bioenergetic analysis and anti-aging medicine, and he probably has a bunch of other credentials in psychotherapy and other things that he has done. He really thinks out of the box, but he is a true scientist. He understands how to take these concepts and develop studies and try to avert some of the criticism. But Steve is not adverse to criticism, that's for sure. But he has done some wonderful things. He's revitalized patients in cardiology by really thinking about the energy systems, and including my dad, actually, which went on the awesome foursome. We talked about that historically, and he went on the awesome foursome, and it's just a quick story. I'll tell you, after a week, he said, you know, these vitamins are great, but I'm losing weight, and my family doctor told me to get off these medicines. And I said, well, what do you mean you're losing? He goes, I lost 8 pounds, and he said, I feel great. And of course, he was bloated. He was in cardiac failure, and they were treating him symptomatic with some cardiac medicine. I said, Dad, don't stop the medicines. You just lost a gallon of fluid. If you understand that, you know, 1 gallon weighs about 8 pounds. And I said, you're not going to lose any more weight. But it really goes to show you traditional medicine didn't quite understand what magnesium, L-carnitine, D-ribose, and CoQ10 did for his heart. It made it stronger. It made it pump. It pumped all that edema out of his legs. That's one of the examples of revitalization. Here are some of the books that Dr. Sinatra wrote, and we've discussed these historically, but the reason we're here today is to discuss the 2 most recent books that Dr. Sinatra has written. We're going to spend this first show on earthing, perhaps the most important health discovery ever. This may be controversial, but I'll leave it to Steve to discuss this. But what is this earthing thing? What is this grounding? Let me just introduce a concept of something called free radicals that a lot of people have heard about. You realize that we're bombarded with free radicals with our diet, with trans fats, with x-rays, with ionizing radiation. There are these bad positive charged things in our body. You know, and you've heard of antioxidants. Why do you take some antioxidants? Because it chews up these free radicals. Athletes that think they're doing themselves a favor by working out 1, 2, 3, 4 hours a day sometimes, generate damage to their cells and free radicals. And if we had an easy way to sort of neutralize these free radicals, it would be awesome. So something called earthing is like one gigantic anti-inflammatory, sleep booster, energizer, all wrapped up in one. Is this crazy? Does this make any scientific sense at all? But I call this a free lunch. Most people want the most benefits for the least amount of work. This is it. It gives you more benefits for the least amount of work that's out there. But unfortunately, our profession does not often reward those who question dogma. And with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Steve Sinatra. And you're not here to hear me talk, but I want to introduce Steve, thank him for being here. Maybe give a little history of this earthing, or another word for it is grounding. We're grounded. Historically, we were never grounded. This earth is like one big reservoir of negative electrons. How can we get those into the body to neutralize these free radicals? Does that make any sense at all? Why didn't somebody think of this before? And what's a practical way to approach this? So with that, Steve, I'm going to turn on your microphone.
All right, turn me on.
We're going to try to keep the free radicals out of there.
All right, am I on? All right, thanks, Tom, for that nice introduction. I mean, I guess I'm sitting in a fishbowl here, but probably some of you have noticed that I don't have socks on, and my shoes have leather bottoms. These are, leather-soled shoes, and I wear leather. How many people here are wearing leather? Okay, maybe about 5% of you. Leather conducts the energy of the earth. And what has happened with our society over the last 50 years is that if you look at what's happened with kids, for example, like I was born in 1946, and basically there was probably 50 million cars out. I had maybe 4 or 5 vaccinations. There was no computers. And a lot of my colleagues feel that our generation, born in the 40s and 50s and probably late 30s, are the healthiest people on earth right now because we did not get exposed to a lot of the electromagnetics that kids are getting exposed to now, and a lot of the high fructose corn syrup sodas and the sugars, and we were grounded as kids. And what happened in the mid-50s is like the perfect storm. And what went on is that we had the fast food generation approaching. A lot of French fries, a lot of sodas, a lot of hot dogs, hamburgers, and a lot of sugar. And a lot of kids weren't really walking to school in the 60s anymore. A lot of busing was going on. Some of the gym programs got curtailed because of problems with expenses. And then all of a sudden, the Nike and the Adidas generation arrived, where instead of kids walking on leather shoes, they were walking on rubber. And if you look at the incidence of diabetes, which skyrocketed, and I wish I had the slide to show you, it shows like an exponential rise in diabetes over like 4 or 5 decades. And I think it's a perfect storm. If you take basically young kids and you feed them sugar, like when I was a kid, I'd put a dime in a Coke machine, and some of you people are my age, you'll remember this, you get a 6.5 ounce Coca-Cola in a glass bottle. You don't get, aluminum, you don't get phthalates, it's not plastic, you're getting Coca-Cola in glass. So I would drink that Coca-Cola and I'd get 5 teaspoons of sugar, which is not a good thing. But today, if a kid goes to a fast food restaurant and gets 32 ounces or 64 ounces of a cola, they're getting 50 teaspoons of sugar in one sitting. And our body can't take that. Our pancreas can't take it. And soda is probably the worst thing you can put into your mouth. I mean, it's just dead calories. It's just pure sugar, whether it's high fructose corn syrup or sucrose or glucose, whatever it is, it's not good for you. But today, what's going on is that the average adult takes in about 165 pounds of sugar a year. And by the way, it's sugar that gives you heart disease, not cholesterol. And we can talk about that. But it's sugar, which is really the villain, not fat. Fat is very healthy for you, as long as it's not laced with insecticides or pesticides or fungicides. Fat's okay. Coconut is great. I was telling Tom last night, this whole sizzle of the Mediterranean diet, the secret sauce of the Mediterranean diet is olive oil. But it's got to be 100% pure olive oil. It can't be the stuff that's coming out of Europe right now, which is cut with canola and corn oil. It's got to be 100% extra virgin. But where I'm going with this is that what happened when we became disconnected from the earth, walking on rubber, is that we created the perfect storm. Now we got a lot of sugar in the bodies, and now we're not exercising, we're not walking to school, we're busing our kids to school, and now we're disconnected. And some of the experiments on grounding, which I participated in over the last 10 years, there was one animal experiment that I did not participate in, but I saw the data, and it showed that if you take rats and put them in a cage and feed them the same diet of rats in another cage, but one cage is grounded and the other cage is not grounded, in other words, the rats are insulated, like walking on, non-leather shoes, well, the non-grounded rats became diabetic prone. Well, that's interesting. In other words, the non-grounded rats, they had higher blood sugars and higher what we call hemoglobin A1Cs. So I think one of the major reasons why we have 50 million kids in this country with insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes and overweight status is because of what's happened in the last few decades. Walking on neoprene, walking on rubber, not exercising, eating a lot of sugar. Sounds kind of simple, but you know, you can take the best drug against diabetes. It's called metformin. Some of my doctor colleagues, in fact, if you have Dr. Giampapa here talking on anti-aging medicine, he even takes metformin. I don't happen to take it. I don't like pharmaceutical drugs. I don't even take aspirin. I take nothing. But I have to tell you, well, I would take aspirin if I had coronary disease. I mean, for secondary prevention, but not primary prevention. But anyway, you can take the best drug against type 2 diabetes and put it up against a walking program and a low carbohydrate diet. And you get these people walking and eating lower carbs and more healthy fats, and those lifestyle changes will do much better than taking a pharmaceutical drug. And that was reported in the New England Journal of Medicine about 10 years ago. So we know that lifestyle changes will prevent diabetes. Now, what we need to do is, we certainly need to avoid sugars, do more walking, exercise more, but you need to walk barefoot.
Steve.
And you said it's free.
Barefoot, and it's free.
And it's free.
How does that help you? How does that improve your health? What is actually going on electrically? Let's find out after the break.
That's a great question. You know, what does grounding do for you? Well, first of all, if you're walking barefoot or on leather, think about what's going on. You're in direct contact with the earth. And the earth's energy, it's measured. In fact, we have videos on it. I can put that video on my website. It's called the Schumann energy. And the Schumann energy of the earth, Mother Earth energy, it resonates at what we call 7.83 hertz. It's a vibrating energy. Some of you who are very sensitive or very intuitive can put their bare feet on that morning grass that's a little bit wet, or on concrete, or on sand at the beach, or on brick, or tile in your house on the first floor if it's not insulated. You're not going to ground yourself with wood or asphalt. Asphalt's man-made, but concrete's good, brick is good. And some of you might feel that little vibratory energy of the earth. And this is what happens, Tom. The earth is struck by lightning thousands of times a minute, particularly around the equator, not so much up here. I live in Tampa, Florida, and we have a lot of lightning in Tampa. It's probably the lightning capital of the United States. But if you walk outside after a lightning storm, and that energy is so charged, or just walk outside any time and put your bare feet on the ground, you're going to absorb those electrons. And what Dr. Meade was talking about previously on a slide, one of the reasons why we take antioxidants, why some of us take CoQ10 out there, which is the best antioxidant you can possibly take, or melatonin, which is another really potent antioxidant, is that it ties up marauding free radicals in the body. And these free radicals cause accelerated aging. They're toxic to mitochondria in our cells. And that's why we take antioxidants. But you can also get antioxidants through your feet. And basically, in our foot, what we have, let me take off my shoe to show you this. This is a good visual. Right here, we call this the K1 point of the foot. It's an acupuncture point. And when the foot is placed on the ground, what'll happen is, whether you're wearing leather or barefoot, is that through the K1 acupuncture point, there's an energy meridian that goes all the way up through the back, through your spine, through your brain, and on the back of your tongue to the roof of your mouth. And it is part of what we call the kidney meridian in the body. And it's a major acupuncture channel which will deliver more electrons. Because remember, we think we're flesh and bones, but we're really electrical. We're electrical beings. I mean, that's why any of you have a rough time during a full moon? Anybody have problems during a full moon out there? You do? You do? Okay. Well, here's why. Look, if you go to Maine on a full moon, if the tide in Maine can move 17 feet in a full moon, and we're 70% water, And we're a little bit vulnerable to those electromagnetic forces. We call it geopathic stress. Yeah, the full moon can affect us. I mean, when I used to be on call for the emergency room as a cardiologist, I used to dread a full moon. People would come in panic and fear. I'd see hypertensive crisis, arrhythmias. And when I was a young cardiologist, I never could put it together. But when I became a little more wiser, got a few more gray hairs, I realized that geopathic stress can be a big problem for some people. Like cell phone towers can be a big problem for some people. Or cordless phones. And by the way, while I'm on it, that's the worst thing you can have in your house is a cordless phone. It's the worst thing because you're putting out electromagnetic energy 24/7. It's like being in a full moon all the time, but worse, much worse. But basically, it's important for us to realize that when we put our feet on the ground and we get grounded, we are absorbing these electrons, and what these electrons do are miraculous for the body. And I can talk about exactly what they do as far as cortisol relationships, you sleep better. What earthing does, it puts the fires out of inflammation. And the truth is, we are all inflamed. Some of us have skin rashes, some of us have headaches, some of us can't digest our food, some of us have cancer, some of us have heart disease, some have diabetes, multiple sclerosis, and the list goes on and on. But all those illnesses, arthritis, bad knees, bad hips, in the fingers, these are all inflammatory conditions. And my specialty, heart disease, is the number one inflammatory condition because if you have inflammation in the vessels of your heart, then it can cause clogging and what we call atherosclerosis. So basically, what earthing does when we absorb these electrons is we're putting the fires of inflammation out. We're regulating what we call the cortisol in the body. That's sort of the hormone of vigilance, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And what happens in society, especially now, is that we have an overdominance of the sympathetic nervous system. And what grounding does, it balances the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's why when people sleep grounded, they sleep better. A lot of us can't sleep today because of all the electromagnetics in the atmosphere and all the computers and cordless phones, cellular phones, and everything else. It jacks up the autonomic nervous system. And when that gets jacked up, we got a problem. And the problem is that we are out of balance electrically. And that causes disturbed heart rate variability.
So let me tell you how I was introduced to grounding that has nothing to do with health, but I was looking for a water softener years ago, and I really got tired of carrying all these big salt pellets into the basement and pouring them in. And I went online and realized that somebody figured out that if you connect to the ground with a grounding rod, that there's an electric potential. And I said, what the heck is this? So I go downstairs, I got rid of my water softener, I bought this little conduit that looked like a muffler. I put it on my water pipe into the house. This is used in industry all over the world where they don't have water softeners where they use millions of gallons of water per day. So they use the ground as an electrical conduit to get the negative electrons. They disrupt the water, they get a big surface area, and it combines with the positive calcium in the water, and it takes it out. So therefore, and I had a voltmeter, so I knew as soon as I put that in the ground, I was getting a different electrical charge in the water, so it works. So people are gonna say, is this crazy? How do I know that I'm putting my feet, that electrons are going and it's gonna do anything? And how do we have a practical approach when we're not outside to put that in the house? And we're gonna find out right after this break. Welcome back, folks. My guest is Dr. Steve Sinatra, the #1 integrative cardiologist in the country. We're talking about earthing or grounding and the health benefits. Steve, we left off with how do people really, know that it's working, and what devices are out there to help them when they're not outside in the beach and in the grass?
Sure. I mean, first of all, when you're grounded, there's little gadgets to show you. It's a red light, green light. I mean, you can see them online, but it's kind of cool that if you're walking with a leather shoe and you press the button and you go on the concrete or grass and the button is red, you're not grounded. But if it's green, you're grounded. And then the interesting thing about grounding is, like if I was grounded, if I had a rod attached to an electrode on my foot and we all held hands in this room, every one of us would be grounded. We've done conferences, for example, where we'll ground one person and the whole room is grounded. because we'll have each person connect with the other person, because we're electrical beings. So that's really cool. I want to address what you talked about in the home, about how do you know if you're grounded. You know, one of the things, the experiments we did is skin conductance. And what skin conductance is basically, it's like a lie detector test. And as soon as you flick the switch on grounding, and you're hooked up to, let's say, the ground with a wire and electrodes, there's a blurb within 1 second. It's just like a lie detector test. And what I learned about that is really amazing. One of the things that grounding does for you is that it balances the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And I have this theory, because I've been treating high blood pressure for years, but I never got this until I realized what grounding does. Because grounding is like a lie detector test, because you can't fool your autonomic nervous system. So this is my theory, and I'm sure cardiologists will probably lynch me on this one, but I have to tell you, whenever you tell a lie, you're betraying yourself. I learned that through earthing, through flicking a switch on skin conductance. It's that quick. Because your true self, Tom told you I'm a psychotherapist, so I'm speaking now from all my years of therapy training. Your true self knows that that is a betrayal of the real self when you tell a lie, especially openly. When that happens, your autonomic nervous system goes blip, blip, blip. Over time, my theory is it causes high blood pressure. So one of the things, a takeaway today is tell the truth. The truth always works. And you'll be healthier. Now look, is that the only cause of high blood pressure? Absolutely not. I mean, there's multiple causes of high blood pressure. But when I started to get a little savvy in this, you know, I would have patients that I knew weren't telling the truth, and I would play games with them. And I got to tell you, the truth does work. So anyway, that's the answer to that question.
And it's probably the base of a lie detector test if you look at the electrical.
Oh yeah.
waves.
By the way, 99% of people can't fool a lie detector test. If you're a psychopath, you can. I mean, if you really believe, you know, that this is not a lie, and you can turn those circuits around. But no, I'll tell you. And the experiments that I did with earthing, I mean, we shows that it supports heart rate variability, meaning that your nervous system is more relaxed. The other thing, the greatest discovery I've ever made in my lifetime as a physician, and Dr. Meade's going to do a study on this, we were talking about this before the show, is that we know that grounding for 2 hours thins the blood. And one of the reasons that we have so much illness in our society today is that our blood is like red ketchup. It should be like red wine. But what makes it like red ketchup? Well, trans fats do, sugars do, electromagnetics does. In other words, computers, cell phones, Wi-Fi. All those electromagnetic forces are they're chaotic forces, non-harmonious forces that thicken the blood. And when we have thick blood, you can't get oxygen delivered. And the classic example is diabetes. That's why a lot of diabetics have problems with cramping in their legs. Unfortunately, some of them get amputations, because, bed sores, because they don't get blood flow. And we've shown that even in diabetics with ulcers on their feet and diminished blood flow and horrible pain, get improved circulation. And the reason why it works is because when you earth, you're improving what we call a zeta potential. And what that is that our blood cells are spinning. They're spinning fast. And when you earth, they spin faster. In other words, the zeta potential of the blood is the repulsion force of RBCs. It's like this. When you're in New York City in a traffic jam, you're stuck. However, if you're on 95 on the highway and cars are going like this, that's a healthy zeta potential. So what we want is thin blood. We found out by mistake that the combination of Coumadin as a blood thinner and earthing was a disastrous combination, because you took earthing would thin your blood. If you're taking Coumadin, these people were going off the charts. So is there a contraindication at earthing? Absolutely. If you take Coumadin, you can't do it, or you're going to have to lower the dose of Coumadin and work with your doctor.
Steve, with that point, I'll tell you, both of our professions, cardiology and orthopedics, we don't worry as much about bleeding as we do clotting.
Right.
Clotting is what causes heart attacks and stroke. In my business, bleeding in a knee is a minor problem. Clotting is a huge problem. And you know,
you get DVT, right?
DVT. And so if we could get simple things that don't hurt you, medicines without side effects like grounding, early motion, compression boots to stop clotting after surgery, that's what we're into. I just want to say that half hour went quick, folks. There is so much more information. You can read Dr. Sinatra's book, Unearth, and go to his website. That's his educational website. There's ways that you can ground yourself in the house that are pretty simple and economical. So with that, Steve, thanks for being here, introducing the concept, folks. Don't stop there. Go educate yourself. Thanks for being here. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.